Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop solution for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of the Hindu News Analysis, and today's date is 2nd February 2025. I'm pretty sure all of you are aware of the fact that today's newspaper is the budget special. Almost all the articles are related to the budget documents, or let's say the budget announcements that were done yesterday. So out of all the articles, I've taken 13 very important articles and we will be analyzing these articles. Now I know, and you also must have seen the newspaper by now, every page there are 4 to 5 articles. Now some of you will be wondering, sir, which article to read, which article should I focus upon, etc. Whenever you come across these kind of documents, please remember, focus on more of the things which are conceptual in nature. Do not worry too much about, let's say, some announcement where just allocation has been done. Some announcement where, right, the government is talking about what they are thinking of doing, etc., etc. Do not focus on those kind of, let's say, numbers, because UPSC is not going to ask you about it. Now, before I start the discussion, here is a very important announcement. Starting yesterday, there is a registration window which is available to all of you, and this facility is available till tomorrow, that is the 3rd of February. If you register on our platform, for the next 7 days, you can use the platform to avail all the facilities or all the features that are available to the learners. Be it online classes, you can attend any online class in any language that is being offered. English, Hindi or bilingual. You can get access to the reading material that is available online on our platform. The test series online session you can attend and raise your doubts, get your queries resolved as well. If any of you is interested in attending economic classes right now, that is, I'm taking the morning session from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Tomorrow, I will have a discussion on the international trade. That is the concept of exchange rate, concept of internationalization of rupee, the concept of balance of payments, etc. And not just attending classes, you can also get your doubts clarified during the live session. And by the end of the day, I will upload 5 questions on the portal on the things that we have discussed, so that you'll be able to basically attend those particular 5 questions and come to know to what extent you are able to understand the session. So make the best use of this facility. It is available for everyone. Register right now using the link provided in the video. Now, some of you will say, sir, what if I want to join your classes? Should I have to go search for your classes, etc.? All you need to do is scan this QR code, join the Telegram channel, and after the session is over, not only the PPT of the session will be available, I will also be pasting the link of my class tomorrow. So you can essentially register, use the link and join the session for tomorrow morning 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Now, let me start the discussion. First 2 articles, there are editorials. Editorials in the sense, there is a discussion. One is in favor of the budget announcements which have been done, and the second one is against some of the, let's say, the provisions of the budget. Rather than looking at both of the articles individually, let me basically discuss both of them together. Let me basically put the points given in both of the articles together, so that you will have, right, let's say, the all-round idea of what is being discussed. Now, what is the situation in which the budget is being introduced? What is the situation? We can divide the situation into internal factors as well as external factors. In internal factors, point number 1, essentially there is a slowdown in the demand for goods and services. And that should be very evident for all of you now, because for the last couple of months, there has been a discussion regarding the slowdown for goods and services. That is, the consumption demand has been on a lower side. And not just this, the private sector investment also has been lagging. We expect the private sector investment to be higher, create jobs, create demand for goods and services, but that is lagging behind. And not just this, even the government expenditure also has been lagging behind. For example, for the current financial year, the Government of India estimated a total capital expenditure of more than 11 lakh crore rupees. It has been revised downwards to just over 10 lakh crore rupees. And in the earlier discussions that I had done, taking the editorials of Hindu newspaper, I had told you this. That is, looking at the expenditure pattern of the Government of India in the first quarter, second quarter and the third quarter, we are unlikely that we will meet the target of 11 lakh crore rupee capital expenditure. And that is exactly what has happened. We have not been able to meet. In addition to this, there is also concern regarding inflation in the domestic market. Inflation rate has been on a higher side. For many months, inflation has been over 4%, around 5%. Core inflation also has been on a higher side, which is a cause of concern. Food inflation also has been on a higher side. So if these are the indicators in the domestic market, what about the external market? What has been the situation in the external market which has caused concerns for us? There are frictions in certain regions in the global market. For example, the Middle Eastern region. There are, let's say countries which are fighting wars against each other, as a result of which the transportation of certain commodities has been affected. For example, what is happening for transportation in the Red Sea, the Houthi attacks, etc. So the international trade, that is supply of goods and services, supply of raw materials, supply of crude has been affected. In addition to this, many of the countries are facing lot of issues such as high inflation rate, high inflation rate and the elections, which has created volatility or uncertainty in the international market. In addition to this, now there is one more layer of uncertainty which is causing ripples across the world, that is the policies of Mr. Donald Trump. What will be the policies going forward? Will he actually walk the talk and impose multiple tariffs, high tariffs on China, India, European countries, etc., etc. So there is one more layer of uncertainty. So understand the logic here. The authors, or let's say the writers or the columnists in both of these articles, multiple let's say writers are there. All of them have raised that this is the situation in which the budget is being announced. Now, when this particular budget is being announced, has the budget been able to, let's say, come out with proposals which are going to address the situation in Indian economy? Has the budget satisfied all the sections of the society or all the stakeholders of the economy? Two viewpoints. First viewpoint says, yes, the budget has ticked all the correct boxes. I'll explain this, don't worry. The budget has actually ticked all the correct boxes. It is a very good budget. And on the other side, there is one more article which says, no, the government is simply playing with numbers. There is nothing special in this particular budget. It is just managing the, let's say, picture with the numbers. Let's try to understand both the sides of the argument. Now, in favor of the budget announcements, what are the points in favor of the budget announcements? Point number one, please understand this. There was a pandemic, that is a COVID-19 impact. The pandemic had a huge impact on the Government of India's policies. The Government of India, because of the pandemic, had to basically forego all the fiscal prudence measures, that is essentially controlling fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, etc. and to basically was forced to spend more and more amount of money. And that is visible. Please have a look at the graphical representation. That is visible when you look at what happened to all these kinds of deficits during the period of pandemic. And my intention of giving this kind of a graph is twofold. One, it will help me to explain what is given in the article, and second, much more important for you, UPSC has the habit of asking trend-based questions. Trend-based questions. So for example, what if UPSC will ask you, in the last 5 years, has the fiscal deficit reduced? In the last 1 decade, has the revenue deficit come down? Has the primary deficit increased consistently in the last, let's say 1 decade? These kind of trend-based questions are very famous in the preliminary examination. you can use this graphical representation from yesterday's document to answer, get knowledge and answer such kind of questions. Now come back to the discussion here. Because of the pandemic, the government of India had to forego the fiscal prudence measures and keep on increasing borrowing and spending money in order to promote a recovery. And that is what exactly we'll see. That is post-pandemic, you will see that the fiscal deficit, which was 4.6% before pandemic, ballooned to 9.2%. And if you look at the fiscal deficit for the current financial year, according to the revised estimate, now the fiscal deficit will be 4.8%. What is the meaning of this? And in addition to looking at the fiscal deficit, observe the revenue deficit number as well. The revenue deficit was 3.3% before the pandemic, and now according to the revised estimates, it is 1.9%. And in the next year, that is for which the budget estimates have been provided, it is further expected to be brought down to 1.5%. What does it actually signify? Point number one, listen to me very carefully now. During the pandemic, Government of India had to borrow more money, spend more money. A lot of it was incurred for consumption expenditure, which is categorized under the revenue category, or let's say revenue account of the budget. But now, if you compare what is the fiscal deficit, what is the revenue deficit, can I simply say it is lower than what was the number before pandemic? All of you able to understand? What was the number before pandemic? It is much lower than that, which signifies that whatever additional expenditure, that is a fiscal, let's say the support that was provided by the government, lot of expenditure that was incurred by the government, all of this now it has been addressed. Now we are basically targeting more and more fiscal prudence policies, and this is a very important indicator. And the importance of this is, when you reduce the fiscal deficit, and when you reduce the revenue deficit, mind you, this will basically prompt improvement in your sovereign credit rating. It will basically improve your sovereign, or let's say the potential of improvement or upgrading in your sovereign credit rating will also increase. And what is the importance of this? Whenever you look at the sovereign credit ratings, whether it is given by S&P, Fitch and Moody's, you will see that India's sovereign credit rating will be the lowest within the investment grade. I repeat, it will be the lowest level within the investment grade. And if you can control your fiscal deficit, if you can control your revenue deficit, it will help you in improvement in your sovereign credit rating. And if your sovereign credit rating improves, it is a good indicator not only for you as a government, but even for the corporates which can borrow from the international market easily now. And you as a government can borrow from the market at a lower rate of interest, because with improvement in the sovereign credit rating, risk associated will start going down. Right, so point number one, FD and RD have been brought down, have been targeted next year to be further brought down, which is good. It is lower compared to what it was pre-pandemic. And second, with better FD and RD, you can expect your sovereign credit rating to improve, which is good for you. And the third one, many of the experts are basically talking about the capital expenditure. Like I mentioned earlier, many of the experts are talking about capital expenditure. That is, a capital expenditure has been brought down. It has been revised in the, let's say, for the current financial year from 11 lakh crore rupees to less than or around 10 lakh crore rupees, etc. But the argument of these writers is that, look at the amount of capital expenditure that was done by the government of India in the month of December. Look at the amount of capital expenditure. The data shows that for the month of December, we have had a capital expenditure of more than 1.7 lakh crore rupees. One of the highest, more than 1.7 lakh crore rupees, one of the highest in the recent months. So it's not that government is not spending money, but it is just that during the, let's say, budget or during the election season, which happened in the let's say region around in the time period around the first quarter, during that election season, there was a blip in capital expenditure. Rightly so, understandable. But after that, Government of India has basically front-loaded lot of this capital expenditure, and for the month of December, we have spent huge amount of capital expenditure, and that is a good feature. That is something good that is associated with the budget here. Now, if these are some of the points in favor of the budget numbers, what are the points against the budget? What are the points which have been mentioned as a criticism of the budget presented? Let me go one by one. Point number one, the author here, that is, or let's say writer, expert Mr. C.P. Chandrasekhar says, he writes a lot of articles on economy in Frontline magazine, by the way. So he says, if you look at what is the situation in India, like mentioned earlier, the private sector investment is lesser. The amount of consumption demand in India is lesser. And if you look at what is the growth rate of, as I mentioned earlier, that is in the yesterday's session, I have told this already, the growth rate in the profits of the private sector is much higher compared to, let's say, the growth rate in wages, which essentially indicates that the demand even in the coming days would be lesser. In that situation, it is the duty of the Government of India to spend more and more money. It is the duty of the government to increase its expenditure as it had done earlier during the pandemic. But if Government of India wants to spend more money, the most important source of money for the government is taxation. The most important source of money for the government is what? Taxation. Right? For example, as per the budget estimates for the upcoming, that is the next financial year, Government of India has set up a target of collecting the corporate plus income taxes of around 40%. I'm just rounding off the number, around 40%. If you add even the GST for this, it will go up to 58%. So the argument is the amount of taxes collected are the most important sources of revenue. Now somebody will say, no sir, even the government can borrow. If you want to incur capital expenditure, Government of India can borrow and incur capital expenditure. But if you borrow, right, to spend money, it will actually lead to increased fiscal deficit. It will lead to higher fiscal deficit. But you are saying you do not want to have a higher fiscal deficit for this year as well as next financial year. Your target is, I want to reduce it to 4.8% for the current financial year and 4.4% for the next financial year. So if you borrow, FD will, right, go beyond the limit. That is one. Come to the part of taxation. The government should have imposed taxes and collected taxes, but what it has done in the current budget is, essentially it has announced a certain amount of tax relief for the middle class. It has announced a tax relief for the middle class. And rightly so, that is, middle class were suffering because of higher, right, let's say inflation rate, were suffering because wages were not increasing, were suffering because even the fuel prices, vegetable prices were rising up. At that point of time, Government of India looked at it and said, okay, let me provide certain relief in the form of tax rebates. Essentially, if your income is up to 12 lakh, I'll repeat the statement. If your income is up to 12 lakh, you do not have to pay income taxes to the government. You will have to pay nil, that is 0 rupees to the Government of India. Now, please do not generalize the statement and say everybody who is earning income will not pay taxes. It's not that. If your income is only up to 12 lakh, you will enjoy the tax rebate. Sir, what if my income is 15 lakh rupees? Up to 12 lakh, will I pay 0 rupees to the government? No. According to the new tax regime, if you are paying under the new tax regime, right, the slab has been changed 0 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, 16, 20, 24 and later or after 24. So the new slab rates will be used to calculate the income taxes and they will collect it from you. But come to the point here, the Government of India has provided tax rebates for the middle class households which are earning incomes up to 12 lakh rupees. Along with the standard deductions, it will go up to 12.75 lakh rupees. But much more importantly, by giving the tax rebate, government will be foregoing incomes up to 1 lakh crore rupees. The government will have to sacrifice tax receipts or the tax income of up to 1 lakh crore rupees. Now for the middle class household, this is good. But for an economist, this is not a good news. Why so? Argument of the writer here is that by foregoing 1 lakh crore rupees, Government of India's tax receipts would be lower. Correct? Government of India's tax receipts would be lower. So by having lower tax receipts, don't you think your capital expenditure in the coming months would be affected? That is the first criticism. Second criticism is, why in the current financial year, according to the revised estimates, why in the current financial year, Government of India has basically reduced the capital expenditure? The Government of India should have spent more. Reason being, it has collected lot of money by selling spectrum. It has collected lot of money by monetizing assets. It has collected lot of money in the form of RBI dividend transfer. Record RBI dividend transfers have happened in this financial year. Then what is the reason why Government of India has basically downward or revised downwards the capital expenditure? That is the second criticism. The third very important criticism is, the Government of India has amended FDI in insurance. I'll come to that, don't worry. Has amended the FDI policy in the insurance sector. And by amending FDI policy in the insurance sector, it will provide more power to the foreign companies, which are generally considered to be very ambitious, very shrewd in terms of, let's say, their business practices. So are we giving more powers to the foreign companies to conduct these kind of practices in India? Right, so these are some of the criticisms that have been leveled in this article by Mr. C.P. Chandrasekhar against the budget which was presented yesterday. So I have discussed both the positive aspects as well as the negative aspects which are mentioned in the two editorials, or let's say the two opinion columns which have been published in the center page in today's Hindu newspaper. Now associated with the discussion, one MCQ. MCQ number 67. Which of the following statement or statements is or are true? The complete effective capex stands for capital expenditure, of the center is counted under the center's capital account of the budget. The tax benefit announced by the government will affect the revenue receipts side of the budget accounts. Whether the first statement or the second statement or both of them are correct or incorrect, do let me know in the chat section. If you do not know the answer, do not panic. I'll explain to you the key answer at the end of the session. Now for answer writing practice, descriptive answer writing practice, I have given one question as well. Define the pro-cyclical and counter-cyclical fiscal policies. Discuss the importance of these in stabilizing and promoting the growth of the economy. In current affairs, there is a discussion of pro-cyclical and counter-cyclical monetary policy and fiscal policy. The question is on fiscal policy. What is, let's say the answer? Basically, try it out. You should have knowledge about what is pro, what is counter, Basically, use this knowledge to write an answer, very effective answer in 250 words. Now, let me look at certain important announcements that have been done in the budget. The center banks on asset monetization. Center banks on asset monetization. What are the important points? I have mentioned the headings here. I'll explain one by one. The Government of India, in order to raise resources, in order to collect money, essentially in the budget, let's say in the budget, has announced asset monetization plan. Now, what is this idea of an asset monetization plan? The concept of asset monetization for the first time was announced in the budget of 21 and 22. And later on, in the month of July-August 2021, Government of India came out with the model of National Monetization Pipeline. I'll write the short form here, NMP, National Monetization Pipeline. Under National Monetization Pipeline, multiple projects from different sectors or different ministries were identified. For example, roads, railways, power sector, etc. They were identified, and if these particular projects were not utilized or were underutilized, I hope all of you understand the term. If these projects were either underutilized or unutilized, these projects would be leased out to private sector. And under different models, and the private sector would be paying certain amount of money to the government. Now the government of India basically said, I will use this amount that I've collected for different purposes. For example, government of India has proposed National Infrastructure Pipeline, NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline, under which the central government basically is focusing on more than 9,000 infrastructure projects, and government of India requests to spend a huge amount of money out of 111 lakh crore rupee targeted under NIP. So the model was very simple. Identify the projects, lease them out, collect money and use it for expenditure purposes. Now this model was essentially applicable from 21 to 2025. This was applicable from 21 to 25. Now government of India says in the proposal this will be extended. This model will be extended now, right? So essentially, right, the model will be extended after 2025 as well. And the government of India says we will be able to monetize a lot of these assets and generate more than, or in terms of lakhs of crores of rupees, which I will use for investment expenditure. First one. Second one, there is an investment model called as PPP, Public-Private Partnership. PPP stands for Public-Private Partnership. Do not be confused between the PPP, that is Public-Private Partnership, and Purchasing Power Parity. Both are different. The first is in terms of investment model. Second one is in the context of exchange rate. So let me focus on the investment model here, the Public-Private Partnership. In recent times, the amount of investment that we are able to attract under the PPP model has been lagging. It has been coming down. So government of India under the budget says we will try to meet the capital expenditure. We will try to have more and more investment under the infrastructure projects by promoting the model of PPP in India. Because mind you, one way to promote infrastructure is government of India will spend money directly. And on the other way, the government of India will basically enter into agreements wherein private sector will spend money. Now some of you will basically say, sir, what is the advantage for a private sector here? Private sector will spend money, develop the infrastructure, let's say roads, and will be allowed to collect tolls for certain time period. That is called technically as concessionaire time period. So they will be able to generate revenues by imposing and collecting tolls. So government of India now says we will promote more and more infrastructure investment through the model of PPP. And the third point which has been mentioned here, that is access to Gati Shakti. Again, nothing concrete has been announced in the budget, but in the article the term PM Gati Shakti, access to PM Gati Shakti has been mentioned. PM Gati Shakti in a nutshell is a platform. It's a platform wherein multiple ministries have come together. They are present on the platform and they will be sharing lot of information regarding infrastructure projects which are in the pipeline, which are to be developed, etc. on this platform. It is essentially ensuring that all the ministries and departments involved in the development of infrastructure or are knowing about these kind of a project. There is no silo based functioning. All of them are working together. One of the demand of the private sector has been that we should be given access to PM Gati Shakti portal, so that according to your proposals, according to let's say what has been proposed in the PM Gati Shakti, etc., we can plan our projects according to that. So the argument here is, if all of this is provided, that is PPP is promoted, PM Gati Shakti portal access is provided, then government of India alone will not be spending money in development of infrastructure. Even private sector will be involved here. Okay, so this is what is given in the article here. Next one, PMJAY for gig workers. PMJAY simply stands for Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Jan Arogya Yojana, right? In fact, technically speaking, Please understand, earlier there was a different scheme, right? That is Rashtriya Suraksha Yojana. Now that particular Bima Yojana, Rashtriya Suraksha Bima Yojana, that has been subsumed under, right, let's say Pradhana Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, which has been launched from 2018 by Government of India. Under this Yojana, essentially 10 crore households have been identified, and the secondary and tertiary, S&T here is not science and technology, secondary and tertiary healthcare. Wherever you talk about healthcare, you divide that into primary, secondary and tertiary. For example, you go to a doctor for consultation, that is called as primary. If you have a fracture, you will visit the doctor, secondary. If you have to undergo surgery, again you will visit the hospital, tertiary. So primary, secondary and tertiary. So under the PMJAY, the Government of India provides insurance coverage of up to 5 lakh rupees to 10 crore households. Assuming a family size of 5, again assuming, because generally whenever you talk about the family size in India, assumption is 5 members are there. So assuming the family size of 5, the number of beneficiaries under PMJAY are more than 50 crore people in India. It is more than 50 crore. But having said so, please understand, just because I multiplied into 5, does it mean that in one household which is under PMJAY, if there are 6 members, no coverage will be provided? Absolutely no. There is no cap. Please remember, there is no cap on the number of beneficiaries which are being covered from this household, either in terms of age, in terms of number, in terms of sex, etc. No cap is imposed. So secondary and tertiary healthcare insurance is provided under PMJAY. Now Government of India in the budget announcement has stated that even those people who are gig workers, those who are working as gig workers, so these particular gig workers will be identified, they will be registered on the eShram portal, they will have a registration number, and they will also be brought under the insurance coverage of PMJAY. They will be brought under the insurance coverage under PMJAY. Now whether only they will be covered or the whole household will be covered, there is no clarity regarding this as of now. You do not worry, clarification will be provided by the Ministry of Finance. But essentially, one reform which is going to promote welfare, because mind you, the Government of India over a period of time has been promoting welfare of the gig workers, because the gig economy in India is ballooning, it is growing at a very faster pace. But one of the concern that has been holding back the gig economy is the social welfare, social security benefits for the workers. If I am a full-time worker, I will get certain benefits, I will get certain hidden benefits from the company. But if I am a gig worker, generally because there is no compulsion on the company to provide the social welfare or social security benefits. Sir, somebody will say, what about the labor codes? There is a labor code on, right, social security. What about that? My dear, the Government of India has announced, has passed the bill, but it is yet to be implemented. It is expected that from the 1st of April, right, onwards, it is expected that all the labor codes, 4 labor codes will come into force. But we will have to wait and see whether it will be implemented or not, for a simple reason. Center has proposed the law, states, some of them are yet to formulate the rules or guidelines for the implementation. So there is a protection, there is certain welfare measure under the 4 codes, but that is yet to be implemented. Government of India says, I will provide security to the gig workers, right, under PMJAY. Okay, now next article regarding Udan scheme. Modified Udan to add 120 destinations. Now what are the important points here? Please understand, Government of India in the last decade, not in recent times, in the last decade, has come out with a policy. National Civil Aviation Policy, NCAP. I'll repeat the expansion again. National Civil Aviation Policy. Under this National Civil Aviation Policy, essentially there was a initiative that was implemented by the government by the name of Regional Connectivity Scheme. Again, I'll repeat the expansion of the acronym here. Regional Connectivity Scheme. Right? Essentially in Hindi, named as Udan. Right? And Udan stands for Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagarik. And that's the reason Udan is always mentioned in capitals like this. Right? I know Hindi meaning of Udan is to basically fly, but the Udan is an acronym here. Right? That is Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagarik. So under Udan initiative, Government of India has covered lot of these, right, let's say civil aviation companies. It has provided subsidies or the viability gap funding in order to ensure that these air carriers, especially regional air carriers, will provide the flying services, that is, will carry the passengers from the smaller airports to other airports. So the argument of the Government of India was that because the cost of flying, ticket prices were very higher, lot of people, especially from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, tier 2 and tier 3 cities, they were not able to fly, and Government of India wanted to ensure that these ticket prices will become affordable. And that's the reason under Udan initiative, Government of India provided lot of subsidies, viability gap funding for the companies, and they were basically made to sell 50% of the tickets at half of the actual prices, provided at a discounted price. Under Udan, the helicopter services as well as the aeroplane services, both of them have been covered. Now Government of India says multiple airports already are there under Udan. Right? For example, the data provided in the budget says 619 routes are there under Udan, and 88 airports have been connected because of the Udan scheme. This application of Udan scheme now has been extended. Right? How many airports will be brought now under this? Right? Multiple airports will be brought, 120 destinations would be connected, and crores of passengers will be able to commute because of the expansion of the Udan scheme. Having said so, these are the points which were announced by the Finance Minister. Having said so, understand this. There is a concern as well. There is a concern. What is the concern? This initiative was launched by Government of India before pandemic. Right? Much before pandemic, the announcement was done. And whenever the assistance is provided by the government, it is not till perpetuity. Generally, the government will provide the assistance. For example, I used the term earlier, viability gap funding, VGF, viability gap funding. The viability gap funding essentially means the economics of the project. There are certain concerns regarding the financial viability. That is, we are not able to generate sufficient revenues in the project. Government will provide assistance to ensure that the project will become financially viable. So there are concerns regarding these routes during the pandemic as well as post-pandemic. Many of the airports which are covered under the Udan initiative, even after pandemic, because people did not prefer to fly because the cost was even higher now. Because of that, because of the pandemic, because the loss of the jobs, etc., many of the routes which were covered under Udan were discontinued. Many of the civil aviation carriers, regional in nature, used the benefit for 3 years. After 3 years, they discontinued the services. So again, the question is the same thing. Can the Government of India ensure that the model is viable in nature? Can the model continue to remain viable in nature? If the model remains viable, the civil aviation carriers will be interested. Otherwise, the moment the 3-year tenure is over, a lot of them will discontinue providing these kind of services to these destinations. So this is one announcement. So Government of India overall has spent 5,500 crore rupees under this initiative. Until now, right, out of total allocation of more than 5,500 crore, more than 5,000 crore has been utilized. Done. So this is an announcement regarding modified Udan. Next, Jal Jeevan mission. And the Government of India has announced continuation of Jal Jeevan mission. The actual target was 2024. Now, what is this idea of a Jal Jeevan mission? The government of India back in 2019 came out with an initiative called as JJM, Jal Jeevan Mission. Under Jal Jeevan Mission, the government of India wanted to ensure that the rural households will have tapped water supply. Is it okay? Tap water would be supplied to the rural households. Sir, what do you mean by tap water supply? We will develop infrastructure and ensure that the households in rural parts of India will get access to tap water. And on day-to-day basis, certain limits were decided, and government of India said, we want to ensure by 2024, all the rural houses in India will get access to this tap water supply. And government said, by 2019, only 15% of the rural households were getting access to tap water. By 2024, we want to ensure all the rural households will be covered under this. So what is the status? We are over with 2024. What is the status? The status is, as of now, 80% of the rural households have been covered. No doubt a very good progress, right? 80% of the rural households have been covered. But we have not been able to meet the target which has been set up under Jal Jeevan Mission, that is to ensure all the rural households will get access to tap water. So what has the government of India done in the announcement? The implementation time period, the target date or target year for achieving all-round coverage has been increased from 2024 to 2028 now. It has been increased to 2028, extended to 2028. Some of you might be thinking, sir, from 15% to 80%, we have taken 5 years. I know you are very good with CSAT. We'll basically say from 15 to 80% to reach that, we have taken 5 years. Now to just cover 20 more percent, why 4 more years? Just to cover 20% more, why 4 more years? Don't you think, right, it is not rational here? Don't you think it should be lesser than 4 years? The reason is very simple. Under the Jal Jeevan Mission, it's not that all the infrastructure has been developed newly by government. All the infrastructure is not constructed newly by the government. A lot of this infrastructure was already existing. What government of India did was extended the infrastructure to cover the last point. Last mile connectivity was a problem. We have ensured that. Now, in order to cover 20 more percent of the households, a lot more infrastructure needs to be developed. Right? There's a term called as a low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit. For example, imagine you're preparing for civil services. A lot of the subjects is from your graduation. So you'll be able to finish off these particular subjects in a very faster way, in a very easier way. That is low-hanging fruit for you. But a subject such as economics, a lot of you will be afraid of me. A lot of you will be scolding me, abusing me. Why? That is not a subject of your graduation. So that is difficult for you to start from the beginning. You will face a difficulty. Apply the same logic to government of India here. So that's the reason the government of India has extended the time period or the target year of implementation under Jal Jeevan Mission to 2028 now. Couple of more important points. Jal Jeevan Mission, please understand, it is a community driven, collaborative made concept or collaborative driven concept. Meaning what? Government of India is basically looking at the villages, looking at the panchayats, looking at many other stakeholders at the rural level. They want all of these to participate in the implementation of the project. That's the reason they use the term community driven or collaborative approach is followed under the Jal Jeevan Mission. Done? Okay, so this is one more very important announcement. Next one regarding startups. What has been the announcement of Government of India in the budget regarding startups? First one, please understand, there is a fund which has been set up by the Government of India which is called as Fund of Funds. What is this Fund of Funds? Listen to me carefully. The Government of India doesn't directly invest in the startups. Is the point clear? The government of India doesn't directly invest in the startup. Right? If they invest directly, they will end up, or they might end up, owning certain percentage of startup. Government of India doesn't do that. What Government of India rather does is, through SIDBI, there is a bank called as SIDBI, right? That is essentially the Small Industries Development Bank of India, SIDBI. Through SIDBI, they have basically set up a fund, and this is called as fund of a fund. And the money from the fund of funds will be given to alternative investment funds, AIFs, alternative investment funds. And these AIFs now will invest in the startups. They can directly invest in equity of a startup. They can invest in the form of equity linked instrument in a startup, which essentially means government is not directly investing. Through SIDBI set up fund, government is indirectly routing money into the startups. And the finance minister has given an updated data. Through the fund of funds, the government of India has ensured that more than 90,000 crore worth of money has been invested in the startups. Now, what is the announcement? The fund of funds until now had a capital of 10,000 crore rupee that was infused by government of India. Now, 10,000 crore more will be infused, basically given by government of India, taking the total amount of money under the fund of funds to 20,000 crore rupees. This is first very important announcement. Second very important announcement regarding tax exemption. You start a startup, and if I ask you, what do you mean by a startup? If I ask you the definition of a startup, a lot of you will basically say, sir, what kind of question is it? A startup is a startup. Your argument will be, a startup is a startup. What do you mean by what is a startup? Startup is a startup which has been started very newly, which has been started very recently. Then I'll say recent means what? Newly means what? Can you define that particular term? So please understand, according to the DPIIT, right, that is the Department for Promotion of Industries and Internal Trade, which functions under Ministry of Commerce, there is a process to recognize a startup. A startup should not be having, right, let's say more than 100 crore rupee turnover or revenue in all these previous years individually. A startup should not be older than 10 years of registration, etc., etc. If you meet these conditions, you are recognized as a startup. And please understand, once you are recognized as a startup, you will enjoy certain benefits. I hope you understand. You will enjoy certain benefits. What kind of benefits? If you enjoy capital gains, you do not have to pay capital gains tax. If you earn profits, you do not have to pay taxes on the profits. But is it applicable for all the years? No. The government of India simply says, under Startup India policy, for 3 years, for 3 consecutive years, when you're registered as, when you're recognized as a startup, for 3 consecutive years, you will enjoy 100% tax exemption. You will enjoy 100% tax exemption. That is, let's say I am recognized as a startup. I have chosen financial year 20, 21 and 22. In these 3 years, any amount of profits that I generate, I will not pay any taxes to Government of India. Right, so this kind of a benefit is provided by Government of India to startups, right, under the tax exemption. Now, this was available to these startups if they are, right, basically incorporated before financial year 25. Now, this has been extended till 2030. Right, you can enjoy these benefits provided you are meeting all the other conditions. Even till 2030, you can enjoy the benefits. Done? Okay, so these are the 2 very important announcements regarding the startups. Now, some of you basically say, sir, you're only talking continuously. Right? Don't keep on only talking. Give me an MCQ. Right? Tell me an MCQ so that I attempt it. One more MCQ. Consider the following statements. The Startup Fund of Funds is administered by SIDBI. The DPIIT recognizes the startups in India. The startups enjoy tax exemption under Section 80 IAC of Income Tax Act. A lot of you will say, sir, first statement you have already said yes. Second statement you have already told me the answer yes. Very easy. You will come to the third statement and get stuck up there. You will come to the third statement and get stuck up in the third statement. Why? I have given a technical, let's say provision. It's a technical statement. I have given a provision of Income Tax Act. Try it out. Do not worry if you do not know the answer. I will tell you the key later. Now, next article regarding clean energy. Essentially associated with critical minerals. Associated with critical minerals. Government of India, please understand, has been promoting more and more easy access. I repeat, easy access to the critical minerals in India. For a simple reason, one, these critical minerals are needed by multiple industries, be it electric vehicle, be it, let's say renewable energy, be it semiconductors. Multiple industries in India require access to critical mineral. And one more very important point that you should remember regarding critical mineral is that the supply of critical minerals, a lot of them, supply is very limited in the domestic market. And as a result of very limited supply or no supply in some of them, we end up importing lot of these critical minerals from rest of the world. And it should not be surprising to you when you realize that a lot of these critical minerals we import from our best friend China. On a lighter note, from our best friend China. So Government of India in the budget that was presented in July 2024 had made certain changes in the import duties. That is, whenever you import these critical minerals, you will have to pay taxes. They will use the term either taxes or they will use the term tariff. Do not be confused whichever term is used. On imports and export, whenever you impose the taxes, it is called as a tariff. And tariff can be multiple types. The most basic type of a tariff is called as basic customs duty. Basic customs duty. And somebody will say, sir, anything apart from basic customs duty can be imposed. Yes, why not? Additional customs duty can be imposed. Cesses can be imposed. For example, when you import gold, you end up paying 1% agriculture infrastructure development cess in addition to basic customs duty of 5%. So please understand, multiple types of tariffs can be imposed. So one is called as a basic customs duty. So continuing the discussion, I was talking about the earlier budget, July 2024 budget. Government of India had identified more than 20 of these critical minerals and had basically exempted the import of these critical minerals from the BCD. That is, you import it, you don't have to pay any kind of a basic customs duty. And the implication is very simple. Now you can import it without having to pay higher taxes, which will increase the accessibility of the critical minerals. Now this list has been expanded. The list has been expanded, and mind you, this is important. It is important. Why? I'll tell you. The Ministry of Mines has published a list of critical minerals. According to the list which has been published in mid-2023, there are 30 critical minerals. According to the list, they have identified 30 critical minerals. But after some time, in the last year, the Ministry of Mines conducted a study. According to that particular study, the mines says, or the ministry says, in more than 20 of these critical minerals, there is a concern regarding a constant or sustainable supply in India. In case of more than 20 of these, in fact, the actual number is 24. In case of 24 of these critical minerals, there is a concern over sustainable supply of these critical minerals. So I hope you understand the importance of these announcements. So one, the Government of India has extended the list of critical minerals that will be exempted from paying BCD, that is basic customs duty. And second one, the government couple of days ago, that is in fact last week only, had announced a National Critical Mineral Plan or National Critical Mineral Mission. Under the NCMM, now Government of India has allocated 410 crore rupees. What is the objective of NCMM? Essentially, it wants to promote mining, auctioning, availability of critical minerals in the domestic market. It is about ensuring there is a supply, there is mining, there is a supply, auctioning of the mines, etc. in the domestic market. And mind you, some of you will basically say, sir, is it a new announcement? No, it's not a new announcement. It was in fact done last year. Allocation has been done in this year. The establishment of NCMM or the approval of NCMM was done by the cabinet last week itself. Under that, essentially Government of India says a total of more than 34,000 crore rupees. Mind you, more than 34,000 crore rupees will be spent under the NCMM now. Okay. Now next, TDS and TCS. A lot of you will be confused between TDS and TCS. Listen to me very carefully. Both of them sound the same. Both of them are the taxes imposed and collected by the government. But both are not one and the same, both are different. What is the meaning? Let's start. Imagine you are working as an employee in a company. Okay, you are working as an employee. At the end of the month, yesterday, you should have received a salary. If your actual salary, that is on the, right, let's say the agreement that you have signed with the company, if your actual salary is 1 lakh rupees, you will not be receiving 1 lakh rupees. Why? Part of this, basically the company will withhold, that is income tax, and give it to the government. Everybody is okay with this? Done. Part of this. Now, I cannot tell you or confirm you how much will be withheld, because it will depend on the exemptions that you are enjoying or you are claiming, deductions you are claiming, etc. So, I don't want to enter into calculation here. Some of it will be withheld by the company and transferred, right, to the government. Now, somebody will say, sir, no, you are wrong. 12 lakh rupees, right, 12 lakh rupees, right, I don't have to pay any taxes. My dear, two important points here, two very important points. This is going to come into force for 25 and 26. That is next financial year. You are in financial year 25, not in the financial year 26. That is point number one. Point number two, even if it is, right, imagine, now you will say, no, sir, that is very technical, right, I will assume it is applicable now only. I'll say, okay, assume it. What is the meaning of rebate? Rebate essentially means you pay and money will be given back. You pay it, again it will be given back to you. That is the concept of a rebate. So understand this, some of the money, that is your salary, will be withheld by the company and given it to the government. My dear, this is called as tax deduction at source. All of you able to understand? Tax deduction at source. Now somebody will say, sir, I don't have salary. But how do I understand it? Your parents will have FDs in bank accounts. Correct? Your parents will have FDs in your bank accounts. Your father will keep on, right, let's say teasing you, will keep on criticizing you. Right? They basically will say, your father will say, right, at your age, I used to save so much amount of money and keep a fixed deposit in bank. And through that fixed deposit only, I am able to purchase the house in which you are sitting right now and you are preparing for UPSC. What are you doing? Etc., etc., like this. So come back to the point here. If you have a fixed deposit, you will earn interest. Some of this interest is taxable. And when I say some of it is taxable, I am talking about percentage. Some of this interest will be withheld by the bank, given it to the government. That is taxes deducted at source. Done? Now what is tax collection at source? Imagine I'll provide certain services to you. I'll provide certain services, that is, let's say I will sell goods or services. I'll collect taxes on that and I will give it to the government. On the services, not on, let's say, the product, etc. On the services that I'm providing, I'll collect taxes and give it to you. For example, LRS. Under LRS, liberalized remittance scheme. LRS is called as liberalized remittance scheme, right? Please remember this. It is a scheme which has been introduced by Reserve Bank of India, under which essentially per annum you are allowed to take out $2.5 lakh without any approval of RBI. Without any approval, right? Sir, what if it is more than 2.5 lakh? Get the approval. That's it. Go to RBI, right? Get the approval. So under the LRS initiative, if you are taking the money beyond 7 lakh rupees, if the amount that you are taking out of India is beyond 7 lakh rupees, there is a TCS applicable. Tax collection at source is applicable to you. Right? For example, let's say somebody is selling tourism, right, a package to you. The amount is already more than 7 lakh. They will collect a certain amount of taxes from you and give it to government. That is a TCS. But again, there are certain conditions. You can claim it when you file the income tax returns. Again, don't worry, because UPSC, I don't think so, will ask you about filing IT returns, under which section you can claim this refund, etc., etc. I don't think so UPSC will ask you that. If UPSC will ask you that, then guaranteed you are writing exam for chartered accountant and not for UPSC. Now come back to the point here. Until now the threshold was 7 lakh rupees. Now the threshold has been increased to 10 lakh rupees. That is below 10 lakh, if you take out LRS, no TCS, you do not have to be worried. In addition to this, there are certain students who will take a loan from a financial institution and take this money outside India. It is covered under LRS. Now finance minister says, even if you are taking an educational loan under LRS, that will also not be taxable. That is, TCS will not be applicable on that. Right, so that is also a very important announcement that has been done by the finance minister. Next, MSME sector. MSME, very important if you ask me. MSME, please understand, periodically Government of India has been revising the definition of MSMEs. Until recently, the MSMEs, there was a different definition for both goods, that is manufacturing MSME, and service sector MSME. Government of India basically changed the definition. Rather than focusing only on the investment criteria, they focused on two criteria, investment and turnover. And rather than having two different definitions for manufacturing and services, they clubbed the definition, only one definition based on investment and the turnover. Turnover means revenue. So based on the two parameters, same definition for either manufacturing or services. Right, the old definition is given here. Please have a look at this. Old definition is given here. That is currently for micro enterprises, the ratio is simply 1:5. For micro, small and medium enterprises, currently the investment and turnover respectively is 1 crore, 5 crore, 10 crore, 50 crore and 50 crore and 250 crore rupees. Again, I use the term respectively. Government of India says we will expand the definition. We will change the definition. So whichever book you are having now, update. Whichever notes you are having, update. Because this can be a preliminary question. Last year, the same question, or let's say a statement was given on the definition, again it can be asked. So now the limits will be 2.5 crore and 10 crore for micro. Again, please understand respectively, investment and turnover. For small, it will be 25 and 100, and for medium enterprises will be 125 and 500 crore. Let me give you a very simple trick. Right, basically start with 2.5, multiply that with 10, and after that multiply this with 5. Memorize 2.5. Right, first line memorize 2.5. Multiply this with 10, later with 5. You will get for the micro, small and medium. Sir, what about this side? Simply memorize the 10 crore, multiply it by 10 and multiply it by 5. Is it okay? 2.5 and 10. 2.5 into, right, let's say 10 will become 25. 25 into 5 will become 125. Here 10 crore. 10 into, right, 10 will become 100 crore. 100 into 5 will become 500 crore. Simply memorize the numbers. Don't waste your time in doing a PhD on all of these numbers. Okay, so definition has been revised now. That is the first very important reform. Second, government also provides facilities called as a credit guarantee cover. What is the idea of a credit guarantee cover? Imagine you go to a bank, you want to take a loan. You are a micro enterprise. A lot of times banks will be worried. They will be concerned. Reason being, there is no stability of revenues. A lot of these micro enterprises do not have more than 2 or 1 employee. A lot of these are basically owned by the employee, that is the owner and employee are one and the same. There is no stability in terms of revenue generation also. So a lot of times banks will be worried, and even if they provide a loan, because the risk is higher, the rate of interest charge would be higher. So Government of India provides a facility called as a credit guarantee funds. Under the credit guarantee funds, now the limits have been increased. With the higher limit, now bank will not be worried about lending. More and more loans at lesser rate of interest will be provided by the banks. Next, Government of India has also announced National Manufacturing Plan, essentially involving large companies, MSMEs, etc. We want to promote production, right? The last manufacturing plan, or let's say the plan at a national level, was essentially announced in 2011. After that, we announced Make in India. After that, we have announced PLI. But these are very specific to certain areas or certain industries. For the whole of India, covering all of the manufacturing, now Government of India says we will come out with manufacturing plan. Okay. Next, agriculture sector. Agriculture sector. Some of you are asking questions regarding agriculture. Now I'll address them. Again, not specifically taking your name, but when I explain the initiatives, we'll understand. Point number 1. Agriculture sector has one of the largest working populations. How much? Around 46% of the working population resides or basically is in the agriculture sector. In terms of contribution to GDP, it is somewhere around 17 to 18%. But the problem is, lot of the farmers, even after more than 70 years of independence, lot of the farmers in India, even today, take a loan from informal sources, where they will end up paying very high rate of interest. They will end up paying very high rate of interest. So what has the Government of India has done? Earlier, multiple reforms have been undertaken. One such reform was Kisan Credit Card, KCC, Kisan Credit Card. Now the Kisan Credit Card as a concept was launched in 1998. It was initiated in 1998. And more than 7 crore farmers are covered under Kisan Credit Card. Until recently, the loan value which was covered under Kisan Credit Card, and there is an interest subvention, I'll come to that, just give me a minute. The limit was 3 lakh rupees. And please understand, until recently, within this particular loan, up to 1.6 lakh per borrower was collateral free. In the month of December 2024, Reserve Bank of India has issued a notice now. The collateral free loans under Kisan Credit Card will be increased from 1.6 lakh rupees to 2 lakh rupees. Please update this. Right, from 1st January 2025, if a farmer who has a Kisan Credit Card will approach a bank under this Kisan Credit Card, up to 2 lakh rupees of loan they can take without having to provide any collateral. Until recently, it was 1.6 lakh rupees. Done. So this is point number 1. Point number 2, what has been announced by the government now? The limit under the Kisan Credit Card for taking a loan was 3 lakh rupees. Under Kisan Credit Card, you are allowed to take up to 3 lakh rupees worth of a loan as a Kisan Credit Card holder. This has been increased now to 5 lakh rupees. It has been increased to 5 lakh rupees. And when I say you are eligible to take loan, please understand, this is specifically applicable to a type of a initiative which will be basically interest subvention. It is essentially regarding interest subvention. Right? What is this concept of an interest subvention? Let's say a farmer will go to a bank. Okay, a farmer will go to a bank, take a loan. And when the farmer will take a loan, the farmer has to pay certain rate of interest on the loan. Imagine the rate of interest actually applicable is 7%. Government of India says farmer doesn't have to pay 7%. Out of this 2% I will pay. Simple. Out of this 2% I will pay. So effectively the rate of interest paid by the farmer will come down to 5%. Is it over? No. Government of India says there is one more type of interest subvention. That is a prompt repayment incentive. Prompt repayment. If you are a farmer who takes a loan and promptly repays the loan, then additionally 3% more of interest subvention will be provided to you. Right? So essentially reducing the effective rate of interest that the farmer will pay on the loans taken under the Kisan credit card. Right? So this is a very important thing. Please make a note of this. The limit has been increased from 3 lakh rupees to 5 lakh rupees. Okay, that is the first one. Second one, India is the largest producer of pulses, largest consumer of pulses, and largest importer of pulses, which essentially means despite multiple reforms being implemented by the government over decades now, we have not been able to become self-reliant in pulse production. We have not been able to become Atmanirbhar in the pulse production. So Government of India now in the budget has announced a 6-year mission. A 6-year mission has been announced covering pulses such as tur dal, urad and masoor. And by the end of 6 years, we want to ensure that we will become self-reliant. We will become self-reliant in case of these pulses. And mind you, this is not a new thing by Government of India. Earlier governments also have announced multiple reforms to promote production of pulses in India. Right? Recently, for example, regarding edible oils and pulses, right? Some of the reforms are, one, the Government of India is promoting, right, gold urea, right, which has sulfur. Sulfur is required for the production of pulses. We have started procuring and maintaining buffer stock of pulses. Right, we have promoted national mission on oil palm and palm oil, etc. So multiple reforms have been implemented, are being implemented in order to promote edible oil production as well as pulse production. And some of you will basically say, sir, why are you inserting even edible oils here? My dear, even in case of edible oils, we are not self-sufficient. We import a lot of these edible oils from other countries. Okay. In addition to this, on the lines of aspirant districts program, right, on the lines similar to aspirant districts program, now Government of India will identify 100 districts, and these 100 districts are essentially those districts with low productivity in agriculture. So we will identify these 100 districts and implement an initiative by the name of Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana, wherein we want to target more than crore of farmers and ensure that the productivity and production in these 100 districts will increase. Done? Right. So these are some of the very important announcements associated with agriculture sector. Now a couple of smaller announcements. Small Modular Reactor, SMR. The Government of India, that is the Finance Minister, yesterday made an announcement. 20,000 crore for developing small modular reactor has been announced. But please understand, this announcement doesn't have any specific allocation for the current financial year. Right? According to the article which has been provided here, the idea of having a small modular reactor is nothing new. It has been there in the discussion. In fact, in the earlier budget itself, similar announcement, that is regarding SMR, was done by the Finance Minister. Now in this budget, essentially how much money would be spent on the SMR has been announced. But if you look at the budget documents, that is specifically, if you look at the appropriation bill, certain amount specifically allocated for SMR is not visible. That is what the article is saying. But some of you might be thinking, sir, what is an SMR? All of you heard of nuclear reactors? Nuclear reactors, very large scale. Investment is very high. Production of electricity is very high. Same model, but at a smaller scale. That is essentially called as small modular reactor. Okay. Now, research and development, the allocation has been increased. In the earlier budget, that is essentially July 2023, the finance minister had announced allocation of 1 lakh crore rupee for promotion of research and development in India. 1 lakh crore rupee. And this kind of allocation is actually required, because if you look at how much is the amount of investment done in R&D in India, most of the investment, that is more than 60% of the investment, comes from the public sector. And as such, the overall investment in R&D, if you include the government as well as the private, overall investment in R&D is very, very less in India. So, Government of India in the earlier budget announced that they would be setting up 1 lakh crore rupee worth of corpus, which will be, or which the money will be used for development, promotion of research and development in India. Out of the 1 lakh crore rupee that was announced earlier, 20,000 crore rupees has been allocated to Ministry of Science and Technology in the budget that was presented yesterday. And many of the experts looking at the number are basically saying this is a record allocation. This is a record allocation, because historically if you see, out of the total expenditure allocated for different ministries, generally the Ministry of Science and Technology ends up getting somewhere in the range of 6,000 to 8,000 crore rupee. But now Government of India, as a part of developing this 1 lakh crore rupee corpus, the government has transferred or has announced allocation of 20,000 crore rupee. And the experts are saying the money will be used to promote R&D in the private sector. It will be useful in promotion of research and development in the private sector. Okay. Next one. National Mission for Manuscripts also has been launched. And please understand, Government of India has increased the allocation under the mission called as a National Mission for Manuscripts. Right. Essentially under this, Government of India now says 1 crore manuscripts will be conserved and documented. It is essentially fitting with the idea or the, let's say, promotion of preserving our culture. Lot of these manuscripts which are old needs conservation, needs a lot of protection. They need to be handled with care. Whether these are there with academic institutions or with museums, libraries, or even with private collectors. Now Government of India under this initiative, that is Gyan Bharatam Mission, please remember the name of the mission, Gyan Bharatam Mission, has stated that money will be utilized to preserve or conserve and document 1 crore manuscripts in India. Done. So this is a small nugget which can be asked in the preliminary examination. Please be careful. So these are the various articles, 13 articles in total from today's Hindu newspaper that I wanted to discuss with you people, basically representing most of the announcements in the budget. Now, let me give you key answers for the 2 MCQs that I've asked. But before that, one of the student had raised this kind of a question in yesterday's session. It was there in the comment section. Yash Pandey has raised a comment saying that, or has put a comment saying that, question number 65, option 3rd, please explain someone. He has put the term someone, nobody has replied. And in the words of Shah Rukh Khan, the King Khan, I'll say Mehuna. Right? And I'll answer your question, Yash Pandey. Listen to the explanation. Which of the following represents a financialization in the economy? You have a concern regarding the 3rd statement. Corporate sector is able to sell more bonds in the market rather than private placement. Why is this financialization? Reason being, if a corporate, let's say a company, if they issue corporate bonds, if retail investors sufficient demand is not there, they will sell it through private placement. They will try to take the route of private placement. Easily they will be able to sell to, let's say, entities, institutions, high net worth individuals, etc. But rather than going through a private placement route, if they start issuing the bonds more and more to the retail investors, don't you think it means more and more of your money you are investing in financial market now? Is it not financialization of, right, the savings? Yes, that is essentially the reason why I said third statement is representing financialization in the economy. Now, MCQ number 67, today's MCQs. Which of the following statement or statements is or true? The complete effective capex of the union budget is counted under center's capital account of the budget. Please understand, no. Why? Whenever you talk about effective capex, it will include the capital expenditure incurred by the government of India plus the grant for creation of capital assets. There is a term called as a GCCA, grant for creation of capital assets. Now, technically speaking, under GCCA, center will not directly develop infrastructure. Center will not spend money on the development of infrastructure. Center, let's say, will allocate the money to the state, state will spend the money. So, center's assets or liabilities will not change. And I hope you know this. Trick to remember the capital side of the budget is there should be a change in assets or liabilities of the center. Now, this expenditure, which is essentially the grant for creation of capital asset, doesn't change the assets or liabilities of the center. That's the reason it is kept under the revenue side of the budget, not under the capital side of the budget. Done? But please understand, remember the next term as well. There is one more deficit called as effective revenue deficit. One is revenue deficit, second one is effective revenue deficit. In effective revenue deficit, we basically take out grant for creation of capital assets from the total, right, expenditure. Anyways, the tax benefit announced by the government will affect the revenue receipt side of the budget account. Yes, whether it is a direct tax, indirect tax, it is always on the revenue side of the budget. That is the revenue receipts. Second statement is true. Question number 68. Consider the following statements. The startup fund of funds is administered by SIDBI. Yes. The DPIIT recognizes the startups in India. Again, yes. The third one will be the startups enjoy tax exemptions under section 81, IAC of income tax. Yes. All the three statements are true. Right option will be option C. All the three are true. Okay. Right. So everybody is okay. Kanishk Goyal says, so answer should be B, otherwise both B and C option same. My dear, how? The answer, the highlighting is wrong. Don't worry, I'll change the highlighting. Somebody will say, sir, highlighting is wrong. Right, my dear, option B is the right one. Option B is the right one. Don't worry, highlighting, I've made a mistake here. The right option will be option B. Only second statement is correct. Okay, done. Right, so these are the very important articles as well as, right, let's say the questions, concepts related to these articles which have appeared in today's Hindu newspaper. Again, reiterating this, if you want to download the PPT, this is the QR code for my Telegram channel. After some time, the PPT will be available. And under the initiative where you can avail the classes 7 days free of a cost, if you want to join my class tomorrow, where I'll discuss international trade, exchange rate, ECB, etc. All you need to do is join the Telegram channel. I'll give you the link of the class in the Telegram channel. Register and you'll be able to join, get your doubts resolved. Done? So that's it from my side. Take care. Have a great weekend. See you again next time.